You know, we throw the word average around all the time, right? The average price of coffee, the average commute time. But what are we really saying when we say that? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that one little word. We'll find out there are actually 3 different ways to find the typical number in a set of data. Let's get into it. So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at why average can be a super misleading word. Then we'll meet our 3 heroes, the mean, the median, and the mode. We'll pit them against each other in a little showdown, and then we'll wrap up by looking at some other cool ways you can slice up data.
All right, let's start with the big problem. That word, average. It feels simple, but depending on how you calculate it, you can get totally different answers that paint very, very different pictures of the same data.
To really see what I'm talking about, let's imagine we're trying to figure this out. You want to know what a typical house costs in a certain neighborhood. Seems easy enough, right? So here's our data. We've got house A, B, C, and D, all kind of hanging out in the same price range. And then, whoa, look at house E. That $5 million mansion is what statisticians call an outlier. And trust me, it's about to make a mess of our numbers.
Now, if we do what most people think of as finding the average, add them all up and divide by 5, we get over $1.3 million. But here's the thing. Does that really feel like the typical price here? I mean, 4 out of the 5 houses cost way, way less than that. So what gives?
Well, that method we just used has a proper name. It's called the arithmetic mean. It's probably the average you learned in school, and it's super common. But as we just saw, it's got one huge glaring weakness.
So the mean is all about adding up every single value and then dividing by how many values you have. You can think of it like a seesaw. It tries to find the perfect balance point where all the numbers, big and small, are weighted equally.
And that right there is its fatal flaw. Because it gives equal weight to everything, it gets totally thrown off by extreme values. That $5 million mansion is like a giant sitting on one end of the seesaw. It pulls the average, that balance point, way, way up. So we need a better tool for this job.
Okay, so what's the fix? Well, say hello to our second tool, the median. The median couldn't care less about balancing everything. It just wants to know one thing. What number is sitting smack dab in the middle?
And finding it is super simple. First, you just line up all your numbers from smallest to largest. You got to put them in order. Once you've done that, you literally just pick the one in the physical center of the line.
For our houses, the median price is $420,000. Now that sounds more like it, doesn't it? That number feels like it actually belongs in this neighborhood. It's hanging out with the other regular houses, totally ignoring that crazy mansion at the end of the street.
And that, my friends, is the median superpower. It is immune to outliers. It doesn't care if that last house was 5 million or 50 million, it just looks at the middle value. That's why it's so good for getting a true sense of the center when your data has some wild numbers in it.
All right, so we've got the mean, which balances everything, and the median, which finds the true middle. Our third tool, the mode, comes at this from a totally different angle. It asks a much simpler question. Which number shows up the most? The mode is just the most popular kid in the class. It's the value that appears more often than any other. It's all about frequency. And here's a fun little quirk. If every number shows up only once, well, then you just don't have a mode. Simple as that. So let's just tweak our house data a little bit. Let's pretend that house D sold for the exact same price as house C. Now we've got a number that appears more than once. In this scenario, our mode is $420,000. Now you might be thinking, when is this useful? Well, it's huge for businesses. Imagine you're Nike. The mode tells you the most common shoe size, so you know exactly which size to make the most of. It's all about finding the popular choice. Okay, let's bring our 3 contenders into the ring. We have the mean, the median, and the mode. Each one claims to find the average, but they all have their own unique way of doing it. Let's put them head to head. See, each one tells a different part of the story. The mean listens to every single data point, which is why it gets swayed by those dramatic outliers. The median just focuses on the one value in the dead center, ignoring the noise from the extremes. And the mode just cares about popularity. What's the crowd favorite?
And if we visualize our original house price data, you can really see what's going on. The mode and median are hanging out together, but that one giant mansion has pulled the mean way over to the right. Whenever you see the mean being bigger than the median like this, it's a dead giveaway that you're looking at what's called a right-skewed distribution.
So far, we've been completely obsessed with finding the center of our data. But what if the most interesting parts of the story aren't in the middle at all? What if they're happening out on the edges? Well, There's a whole different set of tools for that.
They're called measures of partition, but let's just use the easier name, quantiles. And the idea here is actually really simple. Instead of finding just one point in the middle, quantiles let us slice our data into a bunch of equal-sized chunks so we can see how everything is spread out.
The most common ones you'll hear about are quartiles, which cut the data into 4 equal quarters. Then you've got deciles, which give you 10 slices. And finally, percentiles, which chop it up into 100 tiny pieces. You've definitely heard of percentiles with things like standardized test scores.
And here is a really cool little fact that ties this all back together. That point that marks the end of the second quarter, and the 5th decile, and the 50th percentile, it's the exact same point. And what is it? Yep, it's the median. They're all just different ways of saying the perfect middle.
So the next time you hear someone use the word average, hopefully you'll pause and ask, wait, which one are you talking about? Are you talking about the balanced mean, the middle-of-the-road median, or the popular mode? It really shows that sometimes the most important truths aren't in the center at all. So I'll leave you with this. What stories could you find if you started looking beyond the middle?